I once believed that love meant sacrifice, that if you gave someone everything, your time, your heart, your loyalty, they'd eventually see your worth. I was wrong. My name is Aria, and this is the story of how I died for love, but came back to rewrite my destiny. Let me take you back 7 years ago, in a small coastal town where dreams were tiny and hearts were naive. I was just another poor girl with messy hair, hand-me-down clothes, and a heart full of hope for a future. With Ethan, the boy next door, my childhood best friend, my secret love, the only person who ever made me feel seen. He was tall, quiet, always a bit distant, but with a smile that felt like home. We shared everything: homework, late-night walks under the stars, dreams of escaping the town. I supported him through everything. When his dad left, when he failed his first entrance exam, when he said he didn't feel good enough, I was there, cooking him meals with barely any ingredients, giving him my study notes, cheering for him when no one else did. But what I didn't know was, he never loved me, not the way I loved him. He loved her, Lena, the beautiful, elegant, rich girl from our school. The one with perfect curls, designer clothes, and a smile that could stop traffic. I was just the background noise, his comfort zone, his plan B, but I didn't see it. I was blinded by loyalty. Until the day he left. It was 2 weeks before we were supposed to start a small business together, a little online store. It was my dream, my plan, and I had poured everything into it. But he said he was offered a better future with her. Lena's father offered him a position at his company in exchange for dating Lena and Ethan. He took it without a second thought. I remember standing in the rain, watching him walk away holding her umbrella. No goodbye, no apology, just silence. I wanted to scream, but instead I smiled and wished him well. A few months later, my startup failed. I couldn't afford rent. I worked at a cafe just to survive. Until the night of the accident. A slippery road, a drunk driver, a cold, lonely hospital room, and then darkness. But that wasn't the end. That was just the beginning, because when I opened my eyes, I was 17. Again, back in my old room, back to the day I first confessed my startup idea to Ethan. This time, I didn't say a word. I stared at the ceiling in disbelief. The calendar confirmed it. The year, the month, the day. It was the very morning I had poured my heart out to Ethan about my business dream. I remembered this day like a scar etched into my soul. It was the beginning of the end in my last life. But not this time. This time, I knew better. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Same unruly hair, same faded hoodie. But the fire in my eyes, new, alive, unforgiving. I would not be the naive girl who begged for scraps of attention. I would be the woman who rewrote the game. That morning, when I saw Ethan at school waiting for me, hands in his pockets, that crooked smile on his face, I walked right past him. No wave, no grin, just silence. He blinked, confused. Aria, he called. I turned briefly, forced a half smile, and said, "Hey." That was it. His brows furrowed. "You okay?" "Yeah," I lied smoothly, "just tired." He walked beside me, like he always did, but I noticed it now, the way he only talked about himself, his goals, his problems. How Lena said something rude to him in class. In my old life, I would have listened, nodded, offered comfort. This time, I just listened and took mental notes. I wasn't his emotional support anymore. I was a woman on a mission. That evening, I went home and pulled out my old notebooks, the ones I used to scribble startup ideas in. But now I had more than dreams, I had data. I remembered what worked and what failed. I stayed up all night creating a new plan, but this time it didn't include Ethan. Days passed. Ethan tried to talk to me again more than once. Hey, did I do something? You've been weird lately. No, I replied with a shrug. Just thinking about college. It wasn't a lie. I was thinking about it, specifically how to get into the university that would connect me with early-stage investors, ones I already knew from my previous life. I applied silently, secretly. Meanwhile, Lena, as expected, started circling Ethan more. She accidentally dropped her pen near him, invited him to group study, laughed at his bland jokes. In my old life, I cried over that. Now, I smiled, because I already knew how that story ended. A month later, I got an acceptance letter from Capratech University, the place where I'd once failed miserably trying to start a business alone. This time, I had 5 years of hindsight in my back pocket. I accepted the offer and moved to the city. No tears, no goodbyes, no explanations. I blocked Ethan's number the moment I got on the train. He had already chosen Lena once. I wasn't going to give him the chance to do it again. University was different this time. I knew what clubs to join, what events to attend, what professors to connect with. I became a ghost online. No selfies, no drama, no posts, just work. Quiet, focused ambition. That's when I met Leo again. Back then, he was my school rival, annoyingly smart, emotionally distant, always at the top of the class. But this time around, I saw something different in him. He noticed me in the university's tech incubator lab. "You are right?" he asked. I nodded, cautious. "You were always quiet, but you code like a hurricane." I raised a brow. "Is that a compliment?" He smirked. "The highest form." Leo became my reluctant friend. He was sharp, resourceful, brutally honest, and best of all, unattached to my past. He didn't know about Ethan, or Lena, or the girl I used to be. He only saw the version of me I chose to show him, and that was powerful. Together, we built a prototype for a financial AI tool. In my last life, I wasted this tech on the wrong launch. But now I marketed it better, pitched smarter, and targeted the right early adopters. 3 months later, we got our first seed investor. I became the CEO of a tiny startup, anonymous, focused, strategic, and I made a silent vow I would rise so high that when they finally looked up, they'd break their necks. One evening, Leo asked, "Do you ever think about revenge?" I blinked. "What? You're clearly running from something. Or someone?" I hesitated. Then I smiled. "I'm not running," I said. "I'm building." By the time I turned 21, just 4 years into my reborn life, everything had changed. But more importantly, I had changed. Gone was the naive girl who tied her happiness to someone else's validation. Gone was the girl who cried in the rain as the boy she loved chose someone else. I had become someone new, someone they wouldn't even recognize behind a modest front. I had built a tech startup with Leo that was quietly gaining attention in elite circles. Our product, a financial forecasting AI, had just signed a deal with a top-tier fintech company. I had wealth, influence, power, but no one knew, because I stayed behind the curtain. Publicly, Leo was the CTO and face of the brand. I remained the anonymous CEO by choice. I wasn't ready to be seen yet. Not until the right moment. It came one rainy Wednesday. Leo and I were scouting for new office locations. We had outgrown the shared CEO working spaces. We walked into a slick, modern building downtown, and that's when I saw him, Ethan, standing by the front desk, drenched, desperate, holding a resume folder. For a moment, time slowed. He hadn't changed much, still tall, still charming but thinner, hollow, tired. He was waiting for an interview with us. Leo didn't recognize him. Why would he? But I did. He looked at me and blinked like he was trying to place a familiar memory. Aria, he said hesitantly. I met his gaze with ice. Yes, he stared. It's me, Ethan. From back home. I remember, I said, voice. Cool? He smiled, unsure. Wow, you've changed. I tilted my head. People do that when they grow. He looked nervous as we walked past. He had no idea I was the CEO of the company. He was about to beg for a job. The next day, I sat in the interview room behind a mirrored glass wall, using a distorted voice through a speaker system. He sat on the other side, trying to impress Leo. I've been doing freelance data work, he said, fidgeting. And I know I don't have big company experience, but I learn fast. Leo gave him a polite nod. We value commitment here. Loyalty, especially. Ethan smiled. I'm loyal. Always have been. I nearly laughed behind the mirror. Loyal. To who? To Lena. We hired him as a junior analyst. At an entry-level salary. He had no idea he was working under me, watching him scurry around the office with reports, fetching coffee for interns, stammering in meetings. It was deliciously ironic. But I didn't hate him. Not anymore. What I felt was something colder, more distant, detachment. Ethan, the man I once cried over, was now just a name on an org chart. One evening, he caught me in the break room. You really work here? He asked, awed. I sipped my coffee. Yeah. Why? You seem important. I smiled faintly. More than you'll ever know. A few weeks later, the bomb dropped. Leo announced we were having a CEO reveal party. Our investors wanted to see the face behind the brain. I hesitated. Is this necessary? He nodded. You've earned this, Aria. Don't hide anymore. So I agreed, and on the night of the reveal, I walked into the glass atrium of our company headquarters wearing a midnight blue dress and heels that clicked with purpose. The room went silent. Cameras clicked. Investors clapped. Ethan stood frozen by the bar. His wineglass slipped from his hand and shattered. I met his eyes across the room. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Later that evening, he approached me. Alone? Aria, you're the CEO? I nodded, calm and composed. Since the beginning, you never told me. I smiled. You never asked. He swallowed. Wow. I don't even know what to say. Then don't say anything, I replied, sipping champagne. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Why didn't you ever tell me your plans back then? We could vie. Cut him off. You made your choice, Ethan. You didn't choose me. You chose her. His face flushed. That was a mistake. I leaned in. It was a blessing. Later, I told Leo the truth. Everything. The past. The pain. The betrayal. Even the rebirth, though I framed it as a metaphor for personal transformation. He listened quietly, then said, So, you built an empire just to make a man regret losing you? I smiled. No, I built it because I found myself after he left. But Ethan wasn't done yet. And neither was the past, because Lena was about to come crashing into our lives again and bring chaos with her. If Ethan was a storm from my past, then Lena was the lightning that always struck where it hurt the most, and as fate would have it, she walked into my new life just as casually as she had walked out of my old one, heels clicking, perfume choking the air and arrogance dripping from every word. I hadn't seen her in years, but I recognized that fake smile the moment she entered our office for a collaboration proposal with a marketing agency she claimed to run. I was standing by the conference room window when she strutted in. "Oh my God," she said, with a gasp. "Aria, is that really you?" I turned, composed. "Yes, it is." Her eyes flicked down my tailored suit, then around the penthouse office. Her lips parted in a practiced look of surprise. "Wow, you're doing so well for yourself." I smiled coolly. "I try," she laughed, clearly flustered, but trying to stay ahead. "You know, I always said you had potential." Lie. She used to say I was basic, forgettable, and the girl with charity outfits. Now I was the one with the $1,000,000 views. It turned out her marketing agency wasn't thriving, it was drowning, and she needed a merger or partnership to stay afloat. Leo and I both saw through it instantly. She tried to charm him. Of course, Leo wasn't impressed. At one point in the meeting, Lena leaned toward him and said, "I always believed in power couples in business." "Don't you?" Leo responded without blinking. "Only if they bring equal value." That shut her up, but it didn't stop her from coming back, or from looking at me differently, like a threat she didn't know how to eliminate. A few days later, I caught Ethan and Lena arguing in the hallway. Apparently, she had tried to rekindle their flame, and he had refused. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but their voices carried. "You cheated on me, Lena," Ethan hissed. "You used me." She laughed bitterly. "Oh please, Ethan. You were just a stepping stone. I never thought you'd still be working as an analyst by now." My jaw tightened. Even she was ashamed of him now. That evening Ethan came to my office unannounced. He closed the door gently behind him. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "About everything." I looked up from my laptop. "Everything" is a broad word. I was stupid, blind. I didn't see you who you really were. "You saw me just fine," I replied. "You just didn't want me." He stepped closer. "I want you now." I closed my laptop. "That's the problem, Ethan. You only want me now that everyone else does." He looked stunned. "I loved you when you were nobody," I continued. "You didn't love me until I became somebody." His voice cracked. "Aria, I made a mistake. And now," I said, standing slowly, "you'll live with it." I thought that would be the end, but it wasn't, because Lena wasn't the type to lose gracefully. A week later, I received a tip from an anonymous email. Internal sabotage. Someone had been leaking sensitive product code to a rival company. I launched an investigation quietly. All signs pointed to Ethan, or at least to someone using his login credentials. I confronted him in private. His face went pale. "I swear, I didn't do this," he pleaded. "I would never betray you again." But the evidence was stacked against him. I had no choice but to suspend him while we investigated further. He looked at me with desperation. "Please, Aria, you have to believe me." And for the first time in weeks, I hesitated. Leo found the truth 2 days later. The leak wasn't Ethan. It was Lena. She had seduced one of our junior IT staffers to access Ethan's account remotely. She wanted to sabotage me, ruin me. She wanted to make me fall just so she could feel tall again. We pressed charges. The case made minor headlines. Tech queen takes down saboteur socialite. Lena vanished from the industry. And Ethan? He was cleared, but I didn't bring him back to the company. Some mistakes don't deserve second chances. He came to my apartment that night, not to beg, just to say goodbye. I never deserved you, he said softly. But I hope you find someone who does. I watched him walk away again. This time, there were no tears, only relief, because someone else had stood beside me through everything. Someone who never wanted to own me, fix me, or use me, Leo. And I was finally ready to stop looking back and start choosing someone who saw the real me from the start. There's a kind of love that doesn't shout. It doesn't chase. It doesn't beg. It simply stands beside you, silent, steady, patient. Leo was that kind of love. And after the storm, Ethan and Lena stirred up. I finally had the space to see it clearly. The company stabilized quickly after Lena's failed sabotage. Investors were impressed by how swiftly we handled the crisis. We didn't just survive, we thrived. We opened a second office, secured our Series B funding, and for the first time, I felt at peace. Not just professionally, but emotionally. Leo had always been around, my partner in strategy, my mirror in meetings, my quiet comfort during late nights at the office. But now, something shifted. I began noticing the small things, how he always brought me ginger tea when I was stressed, how he paused meetings to check if I was overwhelmed, how he never competed with me but complimented me. How he looked at me like I was someone worth protecting, not because I was broken, but because I was brilliant. One evening, after an exhausting day, I collapsed onto the office couch. Leo walked in, holding a tray. "Dinner," he said simply. I blinked. "Did you cook?" He smiled. "I'm a man of many surprises." He sat beside me, handing me a plate of warm pasta. We ate in comfortable silence, the city lights blinking outside. Then, softly, he said, "You know, you don't always have to carry everything alone." I looked at him. He didn't mean the company. He meant me, my burdens, my past, my pain. "I'm not used to leaning on people," I admitted. "I know," he replied. "But you can try with me." That night, I didn't go home. I stayed in the office lounge with him. We didn't kiss. We didn't touch. We just talked about our dreams, our failures, our childhoods, our scars. And when I woke up in the morning with his jacket draped over me, I realized something. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I wasn't lonely. Over the next few months, we got closer. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but in a slow, soul-deep way that felt safe. He made me laugh when I forgot how. He reminded me I could be strong and soft. He never brought up Ethan, never judged my past, never asked for more than I could give. And one night, as we walked home from a late client dinner, he stopped under the streetlight. "Aria," he said, voice steady, "I love you." I froze. "I don't expect anything," he added quickly. "I just needed you to know." I searched his face. There was no pressure in his eyes, only truth and peace. I didn't reply that night, not with words, but I reached out, took his hand, and laced my fingers through his, and he smiled as if he'd been waiting for that one gesture forever. The next morning, I woke up in his apartment. In no guilt, no confusion, just clarity, because I had finally found a love that didn't demand pain as proof, a love that didn't need fixing. A love that felt like home. A few weeks later, Leo and I went public with our relationship softly, without a press release or an office-wide announcement. Just a photo, one photo of us at a small cafe, holding hands, and within an hour, it was all over tech blogs. Power couple of the year. Queen of the comeback finds her king, even Ethan texted. I'm happy for you, he wrote. I believed him, because by now, he had accepted that I was no longer the girl who waited in the rain. I was the woman who walked through fire and came out glowing, but just when everything seemed perfect, a ghost from Leo's past resurfaced, and it would test everything we had built. Just when I thought I had unraveled all my pain, I realized Leo had his own knots he never asked me to untangle, knots he kept hidden under his calm voice and sharp brilliance. But life has a way of exposing what's buried, and his storm began with a phone call. We were in a weekend meeting with a new investor when Leo's phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. He ignored it, but his jaw tightened with each ring. When the meeting ended, I asked gently, everything okay? He nodded too quickly. Just family stuff. I'll handle it. That was the first time Leo lied to me. The next day, he didn't show up for work. No message. No explanation. It wasn't like him. I tried calling. No answer. By evening, I was pacing. Finally, a message buzzed in. I'm sorry. I'll explain soon. Please trust me. But silence followed again. That night, I sat alone in his apartment, surrounded by his things, his scent, his presence. Know him. And I realized something terrifying. I didn't know who his family even was. He had always deflected when I asked. My childhood was complicated, he would say. Let's just say I raised myself. Nothing worth talking about, and I never pushed, because I knew how that felt. But now, that silence was a wall. 2 days later, he showed up at my door, hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot. I'm sorry, he whispered. Before I could speak, he collapsed onto the floor, sitting against my hallway wall like he could no longer hold himself up. My mother, he said. She's sick. I sat beside him, heart tightening. She has schizophrenia. And she disappeared for 3 days. I found her wandering the streets. No shoes. Talking to people who weren't there. My breath caught. I never told you, he continued, voice cracking, because I didn't want you to look at me like I was damaged. Leo, I whispered, I've never seen you as anything less than whole. That night, he told me everything. How he grew up in foster homes when his mother was institutionalized. How he was bullied for her illness. How he built walls so thick that even he forgot what vulnerability felt like. And I just listened, held his hand, and didn't let go, because I knew exactly what it meant to carry a history you never asked for. In the weeks that followed, I helped him find the best care facility for his mother. He tried to resist, tried to protect me from the weight, but I looked him in the eyes and said, I didn't fight through hell to stand alone again. You're not a burden. You're my home. And he broke. In the best way. Our bond deepened after that, because love doesn't only bloom in candlelight and kisses. It blooms in hospital corridors. In insurance paperwork. In sitting together through the hard parts. In the unspoken I'm here when life threatens to knock you down. At the annual Tech Summit, Leo and I were invited as keynote speakers. It was our first public appearance as both business and life partners. I stood on that stage in front of hundreds of founders and reporters, smiling at him across the MIC stand, and I said, Behind every strong woman isn't just a stronger man. Sometimes it's someone who sees her strength and dares to match it with his own. The room erupted in applause, but all I could hear was Leo's soft breath beside me. That was my favorite sound in the world. But success comes with enemies, and while we were building a future together, someone from the shadows was planning to tear it all down. Success draws attention, and not all of it is welcome. By our 5th year in business, Leo and I were not just leaders, we were symbols of survival, of innovation, of love built on ashes. But even symbols can be targeted, and ours would be by someone I never expected to face again, my cousin, Camille. Camille had once been like a sister to me. We grew up together, played pretend in our grandmother's dusty attic, shared secrets under bed covers with a flashlight. But something changed when we hit our teens. She envied my grades, my connection with Ethan, my closeness with teachers. She called me Little Miss Perfect with a plastic smile and poisoned eyes. We hadn't spoken in years, not after a bitter fight over an inheritance neither of us truly needed. She told the family I stole from her, that I was manipulative. I walked away. I chose peace. But she never forgave me for it. I didn't even recognize her at first when she showed up at our company's pitch showcase, now a polished investor representative from a rival firm. She wore success like a costume, sleek, confident, but hollow. She clapped during our presentation, smiled during photos, hugged me a little too tightly. "Aria," she said sweetly, "you've become quite the woman." "So have you," I replied evenly. Inside, my God shut up like a wall of glass, because Camille never showed up without a motive. 2 weeks later, we received news that one of our pending deals, an international expansion with a Korean tech giant, had been cut off at the last minute. Leo was livid. They didn't even give a reason. I dug deeper. Through a quiet network of connections, I found the truth. Camille had undermined us, used her influence with a shared board member to derail the deal, claiming we were unstable, that Leo had a mental health scandal, that I had legal baggage from a family dispute. None of it was true, but it didn't have to be. Whispers ruin empires before facts can fix them. I invited Camille to lunch. Neutral ground. Public. Civil. She arrived in designer everything, trailing perfume and venom. "I'm just playing the game, Aria," she said, swirling her wine. "You of all people should respect ambition." "You don't want ambition," I said. "You want my place." She didn't deny it. "I want everything you pretended not to care about," she said. "I want to be the one they write headlines about, not the girl who played martyr and got lucky." I smiled softly. "I didn't get lucky, Camille. I got strong." We didn't retaliate immediately. That's the thing about Leo and me, we don't burn things out of anger. We build higher. And then we let gravity do the work. We hosted a private summit 3 months later. All the decision makers Camille had influenced were invited. Leo and I presented our 5-year roadmap. Numbers, innovation, impact, and then we showed our new partnership with a European AI firm, bigger, bolder, more influential than the one Camille sabotaged. The room lit up in applause. Camille wasn't even invited. But I wasn't done. I emailed her one thing, just one, a photo from our childhood, us in the attic, building a future empire with old Monopoly money on the back. I wrote, "Some of us kept building, others just tried to steal the bricks." She never replied, but the silence was enough. In the aftermath, Leo looked at me one night and said, "You know, I've always wondered where your fire came from." I looked at him, calm and tired and deeply in love. It came from the people who tried to burn me, I said. They just forgot. Fire spreads, and just when it seemed the war had ended, another surprise arrived. But this time, it wasn't betrayal. It was something far more delicate, far more terrifying, a heartbeat. I sat in my little apartment, staring at the ceiling, breathing in the silence. So many things had unraveled. Aaron had left for London, suddenly, unexpectedly. One night, he kissed my forehead and whispered, "I need to make something right," and by morning, he was gone. No contact. No texts. No calls. I didn't chase him. Not this time. Instead, I started rebuilding my own life. I transferred to a new university with a focus on creative writing. I started freelancing again, this time under my own name. I even moved to a different apartment with more light and less memory. But some nights still pulled me back. Back to that hallway in the rain. Back to the warmth of his hug, the way his eyes softened when he saw me. That fleeting moment when it felt like the universe aligned. But that's the thing about fleeting moments, they're not meant to last. Months passed. One morning, I received a letter, a real, handwritten letter in navy ink, on parchment paper. The handwriting was unmistakable. Aaron, Elif, if you're reading this, it means I didn't have the courage to call you. I couldn't risk hearing silence on the other end. I left because I needed to fix everything I broke before I could stand beside you again. I never wanted you to be someone I pulled into the chaos of my life. You deserved a kind of love that heals, not hurts. I'm coming back soon. If you still remember me, if your heart still keeps a space for mine, meet me where it all began. The bridge. I read the letter 5 times. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I packed a bag, grabbed a coat, and walked toward the Bosphorus Bridge, the one where we'd first talked about fate and time and everything in between. It was sunset. When I reached there, the bridge glowed gold, and the city hummed beneath it. I leaned on the rail and waited. Every passing second was heavy. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then I heard footsteps. I turned slowly, and there he was. Aaron. His eyes found mine like magnets. His face thinner, his beard slightly grown out, but that same boyish smirk lingered at the edge of his lips. "I didn't think you'd come," he said softly. "I wasn't sure either," I replied, trying to sound calm. But my heart was racing like a drum solo. He took a slow step closer. I ended it. With my parents. With the company. With everything that wasn't me. I took a break. I'm learning to live on my own terms. And if you'd still have me, I didn't let him finish. I stepped into his arms, feeling his breath catch as I did. "I missed you," I whispered. "I missed us," he whispered back. A week later, we took the ferry to Prince's Islands. No phones. No expectations. Just us. We laughed like kids. Fed seagulls. Talked about dreams. Aaron held my hand on the bench and said, "Elif, you saved me from a life I didn't choose. Now I want to build a life we both choose together." It wasn't a dramatic proposal. It wasn't fireworks. It was honest. Real. Ours, and sometimes that's all love needs to be. A year later, I stood in front of a bookstore window, watching my name printed in gold across the spine of my first published novel. When the Tulips Bloomed, late by Elif Kaya. It was fiction, of course. But also not. The story followed a girl who believed in love even when it shattered her. A girl who chose herself again and again, and in the end, found someone who didn't need saving but stood beside her through the storm. I glanced at my watch. He was late again. Some things never changed, but I wasn't anxious. I wasn't spiraling, because I knew he'd show up. And sure enough, Aaron came jogging up from the corner, hair tousled, holding a single tulip. Tulips again? I smirked. They remind me of you, he said, grinning. Stubborn, beautiful, and always blooming in your own time. We walked hand in hand to the book launch. Dozens of people had shown up, friends, writers, even a few strangers, who had read my online blog under the pseudonym I once used. I looked around at the little life I had built from broken pieces, every shard, every crack, now forming something whole. Later that night, we sat on our tiny balcony, the Bosphorus glittering in the distance. I want to ask you something, Aaron said, nervously playing with my fingers. You already did. Twice. First on the bridge, then with that paper ring in the CAF. This one's real, he said, pulling out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple gold ring. No diamond, no sparkle, just timeless warmth. I don't want perfect, he said. I want us. In all our messy, magical, late-blooming glory. I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I smiled, kissed him, and said, yes. Narrator's closing voice. So that's how our love story unfolded. It wasn't written in the stars. It was written in rainy nights, missed calls, awkward silences, and honest conversations. He wasn't my prince. I wasn't his muse. We were just two broken people, brave enough to begin again, and maybe that's what real love is, not about destiny, but about choosing each other, again and again and again. Thanks for watching. Hoped you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment love, so that we could understand you were with us till the end, as well as please let us know, where are you watching from? Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, spread love.